Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast, where we believe most high net worth individuals and their professional teams struggle to find great capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy such as the Deferred Sales Trust is the best way to exit highly appreciated assets tax deferred so you can create, preserve, and grow your wealth. I'm your co-host, Pearson York, filling in for Brett Swarts. In each episode, I'm joined by some of the best wealth, business, real estate, and leadership individuals in the world to share ideas, deal stories, and inspiration. So together we can make complex tax deferral strategies simple and passive income plans achievable. As always, we're streaming on expertcresecrets.com and the Capital Gains Tax Solutions YouTube channel. And I'm super excited about our next guest. He is a wholesaler and real estate investor in multiple markets, around 9 different markets around the United States. He's growing rapidly, and he's going to provide a ton of value. Mike DeHaan. Mike, how you doing, man?
Doing good. Yeah, appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm super excited to deep dive into what you kind of are doing. But before we do, tell us a little bit about your story. How'd you get to where you are?
Yeah, for sure. So, like most people, I went to college. I got a engineering degree. In electrical engineering, based out of Gonzaga University up here in Spokane, Washington State, where I live. Went through that whole process. Wasn't really into college, but was like, cool. When I get a career after this, I will appreciate what I'm doing more. So got a job at Boeing right out of school, moved over to Seattle, worked at Boeing for like 5 years, and pretty much from day one, just hated it. After 5 years of that, I just couldn't take it anymore. And I just sort of jumped ship and was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to do anything except this. And, just decided I was going to figure it out. At that point in time, I was fortunate that, my wife was working and she'd had a pretty stable, decent job. I've been able to bank some decent money through my 401k and just from having that high salary engineering job. So we took the leap and we're just like, cool, we have our monthly budget we got to live off of. And I'm just going to try and figure out how to, make a business or just do something else with my life. So went down that route and started reading about business books, wealth generation, all that sort of stuff. Real estate wasn't even on my sort of radar at that point. I didn't come from a real estate family, didn't have any real estate background, but you read enough business and wealth generation books, obviously real estate comes up a lot. So ultimately I was like, cool, this is something I should probably look at. I decided I was going to start buying rental properties and flipping houses. I completely just liquidated my corporate 401k, paid all the fees and all that sort of stuff to give myself some working capital to start. And at that point, I bought my first rental property, and then I started flipping houses, mostly using partners on the side. And those houses I would, buy off the market. This was 2018, so it was kind of more possible to do that back then, or I would buy REOs. And then I guess fast forward to, late 2019, I started going off market, marketing for my own properties. And my initial intention was to buy discounted properties directly from sellers. Wholesaling kind of came around as a facet of that as we started to find more opportunities on. And then COVID happened. I got laid off from the other job I was working at the time. I was actually working a development job, like web development job, doing more tech-based stuff. Got laid off from that, went full-time into my wholesaling business. And then that was, March of 2020, a bunch of stuff happened in the middle. But as of right now, we have 17 employees and we're operating in 9 different markets. My real estate portfolio has gone from kind of like zero when I started to just about 10 million at 50% ownership. And, we're doing 12 to 16 deals a month. I guess we were until the interest rate started to change. Now we're doing about 7, but we were doing about 12 to 16 deals a month across our different markets with our team. And, so there's a lot
Awesome.
there.
Well, I'm excited to dive in too. There's a lot to unpack there. So, but before we do, what are 1 or 2 strengths or superpowers that you have that have led you to be successful today?
Yeah. So honestly, one of the biggest things, and I think this is why you see a lot of engineers that sort of cross over into real estate, is because of the systematized nature of the business. So when I worked at Boeing, I was a systems engineer. I worked on the assembly line and I worked in building out these complex manufacturing processes. So having that mindset of knowing how to build systems and like the if then that sort of approach allowed me to build out a pretty robust marketing system and sales system and follow-up system, which as I've gotten into real estate, I've realized, the technical side of that isn't a lot of people's forte. There's lots of great sales guys in real estate. There's lots of great marketers, but there isn't a lot of people that can actually package it into a system. So that's kind of been, I guess, my biggest superpower that's allowed me to scale like we have in a relatively short period of time.
Yeah, and that is such a true thing, because like that is one of the biggest challenges we're having right now in our business, is trying to figure out how to put all of these different systems together, which systems to use, which systems to not use, which ones to pay for, which ones to not pay for.
Yep.
Like, and then like, where do you do with all of these people that are coming in on 3 different systems? Like, how do you go through and actually like create that system? So that's kind of what I want to deep dive into you today, and then get in a little bit into like the market shift and where you think things are going. So let's start off, since it's your strength, right? Building systems. What are the top 3 things someone who's new should do to start building out their systems, or how should they start about or look at this? Where do people start?
Yeah. So when it comes to building the systems and the general process, it's not rocket science. I mean, like, honestly, what we do isn't that inherently different than what you can learn about on YouTube, what you can hire a real estate coach to teach you. But what we do is we approach things with a way where we put kind of our own spice, our own flavor on it, which makes us stand out, and a lot of it revolves around, brand recognition, little details on your marketing pieces, little details in your conversations that makes it so that you are, 1 or 2% more recognizable than all of your competition. So that can be strong branding, that can be, strong web presence, that's, building out the like different web, I'm losing the word here, but basically where they see your ads on the web, on around the internet after they visit your website, the retargeting, all that sort of stuff. And building out your process kind of with the goal to be omnipresent once someone starts to engage with you. Okay. Because it's a very competitive space. There's a lot of people that you can go and start trying to find off-market properties with very little experience and not a huge amount of capital. So it's very important that you stand out amongst all the noise out there. So when you're approaching it, like, I think the biggest mistake a lot of people make is they say, I want to buy off-market houses, apartment complexes, whatever it is. And they go and they, pull a list. Anybody can pull a list. It just costs a little bit of time, money. They go and they send some mail, they make some cold calls, they send some text, whatever. They don't get any results in the first like 2 to 3 months. They're like, this is bullshit, doesn't work. So then, what they don't actually build the presence and the brand around it. So if you instead you approach it of like, I'm going to do this for 3 months, but when they get my card, let's just say direct mail, that's what we mostly use. Get my card, they're going to go to my website. After they go to my website, they're going to see us. They're going to see our track record. They're going to see reviews from other people. Okay. And then after they visit our website, they're going to go on their Facebook. They're going to see ads from us. They're going to go and they're going to Google whatever, and they're going to see Google ads from us. And all of a sudden, we are now meeting that typical marketing. I don't know if it's a belief or an actual proven metric that somebody has to be exposed to you 7 times before they're willing to do a transaction or have a conversation. We're getting that within the first day or 2 once they visit our website and once they've engaged with us initially. So having that sort of thought process when you go into it, as opposed to I'm going to be like a fly-by-night covert operator that's just trying to buy houses. Like, you can do that and you can still get deals, but I promise you I'm going to get more deals than you, because people are going to know who they're dealing with. And I'm going to have a lot more, brand recognition than you will. So that's the number one thing for anyone that's starting, is lead with that, as opposed to worrying about pulling your data and, trying to, cut every single cent and dollar you can out of your marketing, because it's just not going to be as effective.
So basically, what you're saying is you really need to make sure that you're really hitting that brand awareness aspect of the marketing piece, and that's a lot of it's for sellers. So let's flip to the other side, right? Dispositions. How are you disposing of these properties? What are you doing with leads that are coming in? What is the system that you guys use to get rid of these things?
Yeah, so it's very similar, right? So most of our deals that we wholesale, we sell to kind of the same buyers, just because the biggest risk as a wholesaler, it's very expensive to get deals signed around. It's a very expensive business to run. And the biggest risk is ending up with buyers who are not able to perform or not being able to sell a property. You can spend, like, our average cost per contract is about $3,000. So, if we're getting 15 deals a month, we're spending $45,000 a month on marketing, right? And it pays off because we have margins. Like, a single deal can pay for that entire month very easily. But what can happen is you start working with new and inexperienced buyers, and all of a sudden you have these deals that you're getting signed around, but people can't perform just because they can't get their own stuff together. They don't know how to get a loan. They don't know how to close, do all that sort of stuff. So what we do is we basically have our key buyers that get almost everything, but every now and then our key buyers that want the deals, they don't have the ability to close, they're out of funds, whatever. So we need to have that strong presence. So we send out, like, we have an email list, we have a texting list, and we send out our deals to every single list, regardless of whether if they're available or not. And sometimes what it'll do is it'll at least like stir conversation, it'll stir engagement, and all of a sudden we're being known as the guys that have deals, right? The dispo guys that have the opportunity for other people to buy. So then when you are sending a email out, or a text out and it's connected to your company, you now have more credibility because they see you as the company that sends out stuff, multiple times a week, and they want to engage with you. And not only that, but because they missed out on the last deal, they're going to be more competitive with their offers, and they're going to be more willing to try and get stuff done because they don't want to miss out again. So it's kind of the same process, it's just sort of like a little bit different language in your engagement with individuals.
Definitely. So some of the pushback that I think a lot of wholesalers might get is, I mean, comping out a property, right? There's like some pretty basic, like fundamental things that you can do to comp out a property, but then like there's some things that some wholesalers do that investors don't agree with, or the investor doesn't agree with how the wholesaler does it, or vice versa, right? Like there's some issues with how people view the deal. How do you overcome that as a wholesaler? Like, what is there like a certain criteria that you use that's like a golden formula that works every time, or what's the play there?
Yeah, so it is really challenging, and because everyone has different buying criteria as well. Some people are okay with value add opportunities. Some people only want to do, carpet and paint. Some people are willing to subdivide land. Some people, they don't want to touch anything that's outside of a normal size lot. Like, so it kind of comes down to this is where going with like that brand first with your buyers helps, because as you engage with people and you build out that buyers list, you instead can approach many deals as who would be interested in this and what are they looking for, as opposed to how do I make this deal appeal to the most common denominator. Because then what you can do is, instead of having to, get things at incredibly massive discounts, which has gotten more and more difficult over the last couple of years, you can instead say, hey, I know that I have, this seller that wants a property that fits these specifications. This is kind of the price discount that he's looking for. And I know this because I've talked to him. And you can instead try and go and get that deal with that in mind. When it comes to the general, like general population deals, like sort of standard houses, I mean, we don't do anything too crazy. We basically will do a multiplier off of the after repair value based off of the size of the deal and the margins. So, if it's over $500,000, we'll do like 80% of the after repair value minus repairs. That'll be our offer. And then if it's less than that, we usually do 75%. And then in some of our markets, we're in like really, really low price areas like Dayton, Ohio, where properties are like 50 grand. With those, we'll usually do 60% off of after repair value minus repairs. And, those are kind of like general houses, but I think the problem a lot of people have, especially when they're starting to wholesale, is they try to get prices that appeal to everyone. When, I mean, you have a customer, like your customer in this is the end buyer. And if you know what they want, you can build your product around them, on each individual basis. And it's a lot more work analyzing the deals, especially when you have a lot of lead flow. But that's also one of the big reasons we're able to do a lot of deals, is because, we know what our people want and we just get things with that in mind instead. So,
yeah. And that makes a lot of sense. So instead of basically trying to appeal to the general masses, understand what your few key buyers are looking for, and then go after deals that they want.
Yep, exactly. And then if there is stuff that's kind of gray and you don't necessarily know if you have anyone that wants it, I mean, we've always approached opportunities as, we will get them at prices that we would want to buy them at, with a thought process that if we would want to buy them, somebody else will as well. But even then, that's not always the case. So we've had deals that we've tried to wholesale for like, $20,000, $30,000 assignment fees. Everyone's like, oh, there's no meat on the bone on that. We'll close on it. We'll flip it and we'll make like 85. We've had a couple like that over the last, year and a bit. And it's like, well, I mean, everyone was hating on that deal, but we did perfectly fine on it. But,
right.
It's just, our typical MO is we try not to back out of stuff whenever possible. So we always just sort of approach it with the intent to actually close on it. And I think that too allows you to make other opportunities. So
Yeah, definitely. And that brings up another point. Like, cause some people will be like, oh, there's no fat on this or whatever. I mean, some of the guys that we work with over here have been doing this for, I don't know, 8-9 years, probably 13 now. 2008 is when they started, like, in the crash, and they rode all the way up. And there's such a discrepancy in their, thought process as to how much something should cost, right? To
yeah,
repair, right? And then
totally,
like the
yeah.
other guy's like, well, this is a full gut job. And they're like, you can do that job for 60 grand easy,
Mhm.
and it's like, it's frustrating sometimes as the dispo guy to be like, well, I don't know who's more right, because prices have gone up, right? Insurance costs have gone up. The price of materials has gone up. Like, where do we? So how are you guys navigating that challenge where the inflation has taken prices up, and you guys are now still flipping, right?
Mhm.
How are you handling that? Supply chain issues, all that good stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's definitely more challenging. We are flipping quite a bit less over the last 6 months. We haven't bought anything to flip. We've bought stuff basically at numbers and with the intention to basically be able to refinance out and keep it as a rental. Um, if we weren't able to flip it, but we've mostly been wholesaling over the, since the market started to turn here. We're in August, so 3-4 months ago. And then with stuff that we are sort of unsure about, like the value or the way things are going to go, we've been doing a lot of creative financing stuff. So, seller carries, seller wraps. We've done a handful of novation agreements, if you guys are familiar with that, which is basically where we partner with the homeowner to flip the house.
Yep.
And what that'll do is it'll greatly limit our risk exposure, because we don't actually have to get a loan and take title. We basically, get a POA over the person, and then we put a lien on the property for our profit and our cost to fix it up. So that way, if they, it doesn't sell, we basically are secured by the asset over the long term. We've been doing some subject twos with older sellers that, refinance over the past couple of years and have like 3.5% to 4% rates. And, instead of us having to do 7.5%, we'll buy it subject to and then just give them like a solid down payment. And then, that way they can get as much equity out as they're going to be able to get. We don't have to put in as much on the money side of it, the finance side. So it's approaching things away from just like a cash offer sort of circumstance.
Yeah.
And that's been huge for us.
Yeah, definitely. So when you guys have scaled pretty good. What, and we talked about, implementing the systems. Obviously that's a huge part of it.
Yeah.
So what are and we talked about the brand awareness being a big part of it as well. With things kind of going in the wrong direction, I'll say, right, from a marketing standpoint. Where are you guys with your scalability? Because you mentioned you were in 9 markets, and then you kind of said Boise took a dump.
It did,
right?
yep.
So, what are you guys doing to combat that right now?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things that we've done, and we started doing this when we scaled anyway, to reduce that downside, because like I said, it is such an expensive business to run, and the typical time for your money to come back to you is like 90-ish days. If you look at how long it takes for the marketing to go through, you to have the good conversations, the transaction to go through, you help people move, do all that sort of stuff. Take about 75 to 90 days. So as we scale in these different markets, we primarily started working with key partners in those markets that basically were our primary buyers and our local experts. So what that would do is it gives us a much more easy solution on the exit, as opposed to us having to build out a brand presence and establish like a full dispositions process and all that sort of stuff there. We have a key person that we work with in these places that we're almost like marketing for them. Right. So we know what they're at. And it goes back to what I was talking about before. We have like our buyer's buy box. We just target those things, and it allows us to, sure, we give up on some of the upside of the deal because we split it with them, but it's reducing our risk because we know we're going to be able to get stuff closed because they are tied into our system with us. So that's been one of the biggest things. But obviously with stuff like Boise going sideways, I mean, there's some markets right now that just exploded so much. I mean, Boise, that market's insane. Like we were putting in cash offers down there for like 2.5 times what a house sold for on the market in like 2019. Like there'd be a house that was
Wow.
sold for 180 grand, and we'd be putting a cash offer on it for like 500 grand. Because the thing's going to be worth when it's fixed up 650, but it's like a Vinyl Village, 3-bed, 2-bath rancher. But that's
Yeah.
just how it is. And so what happened as the market turned, all those people are like, well, where am I going to go? Like, I can't afford to buy anything else here. I don't want to overpay for these properties. I just want too much money for my property. It's like, well, I don't know. Like it just sort of stopped dead. Most of our other markets have been fine though. It was mainly just that one that went well. Some of our stuff in the South has been good. We were actually doing some stuff in Orange County, and that's been going great. Of all places, surprisingly, that was the one that I really expected to go sideways, but that's actually been better than our Idaho and our Colorado markets. So it's just interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So what markets are you in?
Yeah, so Spokane and North Idaho are our home markets. This is where I own most of my rentals as well. We are in outskirts of Chicago. So like there's a bunch of different towns about an hour away from Chicago city center that we market to. We do Dayton, Ohio. We're doing Augusta, Maine. We are doing, where else are we at? Colorado Springs, Boise, Idaho, Orange County, Ocean Shores, Southern California. And is that all of them? I missed one. Oh, San Antonio, Texas.
Gotcha.
I think that's all of them. Yeah. So kind of all over the place.
Gotcha. Okay. And how do you guys enter a new market?
So originally the way we were looking at it was kind of like how most people would. So, you look at the growth in the area, you look at the price to rental ratio, you look at the investor presence, and we would go through and just, kind of analyze that with our own basic metrics. Honestly, it was kind of like a wag a lot of the time, right? And what we would basically just commit to marketing somewhere for a few months. If it didn't work, we would pull it somewhere else. That's how we originally started scaling outside. And then as the market started to get weird, because we've added several of these markets over the last couple of months as the market started to get funny, and it just came down to finding those key people. And so just going different networking events. I'm very involved in the real estate investment community nationwide. I'm in a bunch of different mastermind groups. We'd find people that were super strong buyers, wanted to work with us, and that would sort of dictate where we would go. That doesn't necessarily mean that we would go with everyone that was like that, because we have a lot of people that were in super competitive markets where I'm like, I don't really know if we can find opportunities there. Like Austin, Texas, like that's going to be a difficult one right now, because despite what's going on, there's still so much money and so many people moving there. I'm not confident in us being able to get really good deals. But yeah, I mean, if there's a strong buyer there that wants to work with us, like we'll definitely give it a look.
So really, you guys start with the buyer, and then you go and do the marketing for the buyer. So you're almost acting as a real estate agent company, just nationwide, and technically just wholesaling the deals.
Kind of, yeah. Because we market for them all directly off market. We're doing all the negotiations. We're doing a lot of the basic due diligence and that sort of stuff. And then they're almost more like the agent. In fact, a lot of them are agents because they have their list of buyers on that side. We're basically just supplying the inventory.
Okay. So a lot of these people that are your boots on the ground are really agents.
Yeah, quite a few of them are. Not all of them, but a lot of them are.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So then that leads me to this question. What kind of softwares and stuff are you guys using to track all your stuff?
Yeah. So, we have a CRM. We just use one called RE Simply. It's a very popular one these days that most people can go use. It's a super turnkey CRM that's built for real estate investors. Data pulling will depend on the kind of assets that we're using, but same as most people, we use PropStream, or we will use, I got the name of the commercial one that we use. Typical there. And then for our database stuff, we just use a system that's called Invelo, which is basically database management that we use to do our list stacking. And that's honestly it. Like it's not a lot of rocket science outside of that. And then, just organizing everything. We have a Google Drive that's a giant mess with a bunch of different stuff in there. And we just sort of turn and burn and just keep everything rolling that way. So.
Interesting. Okay. So no like super crazy Freedom Soft or Investor Lift or
Nope, nothing,
just a
nothing.
few.
Yeah, nothing like that. I think the thing that sort of gives us the competitive advantage is the way that we structure the marketing and the data cycle, which is, I guess, I would say is sort of like our IP. Um, so we have like these different ways that we hit these different people with different types of marketing that's all kind of like scheduled out based off of when they enter our system. And then as the data comes through and gets filtered, the way that we sort of like reanalyze the data and we modify the data for stuff that isn't working, is what gives us sort of like a major competitive advantage. And a lot of it, I won't go too much into the weeds with it, but a lot of it's manual. I have a lot of VAs that will go through and just be manually checking stuff and changing things and doing all that sort of stuff to make sure that all of our data is correct and that we are being as effective as possible with our marketing.
That's interesting. So you're not really diving into the automation systems. You're really just kind of having VAs do it. And
Yep. Yep. Yep.
interesting.
Yep. So it's funny. We originally went down the path of doing a lot more automations, but it just comes down to risk reward, not risk reward, like the risk return on it, because you can find VAs to do repetitive tasks for so much cheaper than it would take to develop anything that's truly automated. And sure, there's some more headaches with it, but honestly, once you have it at scale and you get like the king VA to monitor the rest of the VAs, it's not that bad. you know,
Interesting.
they just sort of churn through, and we almost have just like a team that runs all that ourselves. So.
Nice. Okay, cool. All right. Well, so are you guys exiting anything right now?
Yeah. We have a couple of properties actually that we're looking to exit. I mean, I'm glad that we're chatting because this is something that we've been trying to figure out is how to handle the tax situation. So, we've bought quite a lot of properties over the last little bit, especially in our local market. And, from our marketing too, even though I'm a wholesaler, we found not just like single family stuff. We found, we've done deals with mobile home parks, triple net properties, like land, everything you can say. They've all come through the same marketing channels. And the interesting thing is we don't even necessarily market to them. It's just in the method of marketing for distressed sellers. Distressed sellers don't always only own a house. Sometimes they own like larger assets.
Yep.
Like we bought an 8-unit apartment complex nearby here for $475,000 last December. And once the thing is stabilized and fully rented out, which we're almost done with that, thing should be worth just south of $1 million. And our total money be like less than 50 grand. So, that's a pretty sick deal. So that's one that we're looking to exit here. And we're like, if we sell it though, what are we gonna do with all that money, especially with the way that we're approaching a lot of our purchases right now? We're doing, low money down, seller wrap, seller finance, things like that. Like I almost need to force a deal to put that into, but obviously I don't want to buy a bad deal with, $350,000 in profit.
Yeah, definitely. And that's and that kind of leads me to this question. So, I mean, if you're going to do a 1031, right? What's the biggest frustration with that?
I mean, it's obviously finding the deal, right? And especially doing it in a timely manner. And I know that we'll have opportunities, but obviously I want to be stepping up. I don't want to be rolling an 8-unit into like 10 single families, which is going to create 10 more problems. Like I would love to go and get that into larger debt. So, we've looked at things like syndications and, DSTs, all that sort of stuff. But if we could roll it into a much larger asset, that would obviously be ideal. So we can get more long-term debt that's at a decent rate. So, I mean, not decent rate now, but could be a decent rate sometime again, hopefully in the future.
Yeah, no, yeah. And that's the ticket, right? And that's and that's really what the value proposition is that we can provide is, you mentioned DST. I'm going to go out on a limb here and assume that you were referring to a Delaware statutory trust.
That was what I was referring to. Yeah.
Cool. So we have a DST as well. But this one is called a Deferred Sales Trust. But the difference is Delaware is basically a 1031 into a REIT. And so you got to roll everything over into just basically a big 1031, REIT company, which is cool. You get turnkey, properties, Class A properties. However, you're illiquid, you're stuck in the deal, and you have no control. You get your pref, but they are expensive. And it's a good way to solve a mortgage over basis, which you guys don't have that problem. It doesn't sound like.
Yeah. So.
But for a lot of people, right there's a lot of drawbacks to the DSTs, the Delaware Statutory Trusts.
Mhm.
And the same thing you mentioned with the 1031s, right? Like 10 are essentially, they're great if you could find that up leg right away. But if you got 45 days to identify and 180 days to close in a market that's unstabilized,
Yeah.
you do not want to be a motivated buyer in an unstabilized market.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, but what's really cool about the deferred sales trust is that it's like kind of agnostic. So you don't have to go into real estate right away. You have the option to, but you don't have to. You can sell a commercial building and you can go into a business, crypto, some stocks and bonds if you want. If you find a good real estate deal, you can go into real estate when you want. So there are so many different ways to skin that cat. There's no time constraints.
Mm.
So you don't have this 45-day window where you're trying to cram in and find a deal. So we had a gentleman in 2006. Imagine this. He had a $20 million commercial property across from the Minnesota Vikings Stadium. And he had done multiple 1031s and finally got to the point where he was like, look, I don't want a 1031. I see the writing on the wall. I think the market's going to be going down here soon, but I want to liquidate. I want to get out. I want to pay off my debt. And I want to just kind of chill. Like, I don't like where this is going. So he ends up doing a deferred sales trust with us. Saves about $3 million in tax, pays off all of his debt, puts all of the proceeds into a super conservative mixture of bonds and mutual funds. He earned about 4%, but he was earning 4% on that $3 million that he saved as well. 2012, he gets a call from the bank, and they're like, hey, you know that property you sold back in 06? He's like, oh, yeah, that one to the 1031 buyer who way overpaid for it. They're like, yeah, we're foreclosing on them. We want to know if you want to buy it back. He's like, well, how much is it? And they're like, it's about 40% off what you sold it for. He's like, yeah, give me 3 days. So he turns around and he partners with his trust, and he goes and he buys the property back. And on top of that, he got a brand new depreciation schedule.
Nice.
So that doesn't happen every day. But he was set up for success, right? And because he didn't have the time constraints, he didn't have the like kind constraints, he had control over the timing. He had control over the assets and when he was going to go in and when he was not. And so he's a billionaire now, but it just goes to show you that when you're set up right, you can exit like the billionaires, right? If you do the things that they do. So that's the quick deferred sales trust story. And if you guys are interested in learning more about that, you can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. We have a mastermind every Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. So, Mike, I'll definitely invite you to that so you can come and learn and check it out. Bring your CPAs, bring your financial advisors, bring your attorneys, estate planners, bring your wives, all that good stuff, right? Phenomenal place to just learn and grow. So that could be an absolute home run for you guys. Especially if you're looking to liquidate more assets in the future, right? And get liquid and diversified and wait, there's a lot of really cool things you can do with it.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to connect with you because looking at, I have a handful of properties I bought 2018, 19, 20 that have grown a huge amount. And I realistically have probably 1.5 million in profit that I'm going to be sort of looking to liquidate here over the next like 3 to 6 months. So I should talk to you about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, depending upon where they are, right? You're looking at 20 to 50% if you're in California. So if any of those are in Orange County.
Yeah, no, unfortunately they aren't. They're all in Washington State where we don't have state income tax here. So that's the one area that we, do pretty well. But
that's huge. Yeah, that's big time. Where it really starts to make a lot of sense is when you're at $1 million like net proceeds going into the trust and $1 million gain. You pass that, no matter what market you're in, it makes sense to do a deferred sales trust because you're going to earn a preferred rate of return on the money. And so, it's that's the ticket, right? You while you're waiting, you're earning on that tax that you would have paid. I mean, that
Yeah.
guy earned 4.5% on $3 million. Otherwise, it's gone to the government, and he didn't have to. He didn't have to set himself up for failure. So
Yeah.
it's a phenomenal solution, phenomenal tool
Sweet.
about that. So, all right, well, Mike, we're definitely coming up on our time here. I know you're a busy guy, so let me get you into the lightning round really quick, and then
Yeah.
we'll plug your podcast, and we'll go from there.
Cool.
All right, so lightning round. What is your favorite leadership quote?
Oh man, true leadership quote. I don't know if this qualifies as a leadership quote. It kind of does, but I love that you're the quote. You're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. That's a big thing that I've sort of taken to heart especially as I started to get into entrepreneurship. And I would have like all of my corporate friends that I weren't exactly escalating my entrepreneurship goals. So making sure and being intentional to join groups and engage with people that were like-minded was huge. And so that's the big thing that I always recommend to people who are sort of looking to go on a similar path.
Awesome. What is your favorite book?
4-Hour Workweek. That was the book that I would say changed my life. I was really unhappy when I was at Boeing, and I was actually on vacation, and I read the 4-Hour Workweek. And it's when I was in Hawaii with my now business partner, and I was reading this book, and I was telling him, I was like, bro, like we don't need to work these jobs. Like we can, like you need to read this. We can go and do something different. And I quit my job 3 months after that. So
I got to read it.
yeah,
I've not read that one yet. I've only heard good things about it.
Yeah, it's good, and it's one of those things that if you're versed in business and passive income and outsourcing different parts of your business or stuff, it's pretty simplistic. But when you're completely new to that, it was like world shaping for me.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. What are you most curious about right now?
Yeah. I mean, what I'm most curious about is just like our current situation with finances and like the world economic situation. And I mean, especially because I don't think the real estate market is going to crash, because I feel like individuals have figured out how to game the system, and the government has, set it up so that you can buy houses kind of regardless of the price. Right. So I've been thinking about this a lot recently. They've already have the FHA loans that you can use to buy a house for 3.5% down, or sometimes, a VA loan for 0% down.
Yeah.
Sure, the associated cost with that, when the interest rates go up, that makes it less affordable, right? But so that's been the whole thing. People are saying the market's going to crash because people can no longer afford the monthly payments on these mortgages. But now you're starting to see people have gamed the system where they are saying, hey, we have this house for $450,000. To have the same payment as last year would have to sell for $350,000. But we will give you $25,000 towards your loan to make it so that your rate's only 3%. Right? That's a big thing we've been seeing on a lot of listings. And I noticed that, and I start to think of, is the market actually able to crash while there's people that, everyone has discovered that human beings live on a monthly budget, right? A lot of people have known this for a while, but that's the only thing that matters is their monthly nut being covered by their money. And when you have everyone being aware of that, and they are now gaming the values of their assets so that the monthly payment's always affordable to the consumer, will the price of properties ever actually go down? And also, will the government allow it to go down? Because they can even do their own things to make that monthly payment also stay lower, doing 40-year mortgages, 50-year mortgages, things like that. So I'm just extremely fascinated and curious about what's going to happen there, especially because I feel like there's a lot of people that are determined to make sure that 2008 doesn't happen, even if it's not sort of like a by the books way, with their own creative, motivations. So
Yeah, that is an interesting facet, because on the one hand, you have all these like people who kind of, I think it's millennial investors who are like just like itching for a 2008 to happen because they feel like they missed out, and they're like not able to, they weren't able to capitalize really on that time, right? Or they missed it. And so they're like, oh, like I really want the market to be down so we could have this like fat buying opportunity. Every headline on YouTube is the market's crashing. It's the biggest crash ever. I don't know. I mean, I think prices will dip a little bit, maybe another like 5 to 10%, but I think they'll normalize and they'll stabilize. I mean, we were in such a crazy, stupid market. It was unbelievable.
Totally.
You were paying 2.5%, 2.5 times over the value of a home, man, and it was going so quick. Like,
Mhm.
it's asinine, like to think like that. I mean, I have a listing right now where it's $578,000 for an 800 square foot condo in Irvine. That's
Yeah.
like dated from like 1985.
Yeah.
And like, it's dropped from 599, and I'm like, selling it. Like, look, like, this is crazy. Like, I bought a 3,600 square foot house, brand new build in Vegas for 500,000.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
like prices are just bananas. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do think they need to stabilize a little bit, and I do think that they will kind of calm down. What happens with, I don't know, the currency in China and all that kind of stuff, that's a whole nother aspect. So who
It
knows,
is.
right?
Yeah, right. And and that sort of stuff, it's funny. People always talk sort of doom and gloom about the currency going down and all those sort of things. But I mean, I don't know, lots of other countries, they do okay with not being like the number one. Like, it's not ideal for sure, but it's also just part of history, unfortunately. And I think the biggest thing anyone can do right now is to position themselves to, be wealthy enough that it doesn't entirely affect you. The worst thing you can do, honestly, is be middle class. And that's the unfortunate truth right now.
Yeah, definitely cool. All right, well, Mike, thanks so much for coming, man, and thanks for your time. And
Yeah.
thanks again, everybody, for listening to another episode of Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast, where we believe most high net worth individuals and their professional teams struggle to find great capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy. Using a proven tax deferral strategy such as the Deferred Sales Trust, best way to exit your $1.5 million profit tax deferred so you create, preserve, and grow your wealth. Rate, review, subscribe, share, like, comment, post, repost, all that good stuff on our interwebs deals.
Yeah, right. Cool.
Get us out there, guys. So thanks again, everybody, and we'll see you again. Mike, thanks again, man. Really appreciated the talk.
Cool.